So good evening, everyone. Welcome. Very good to be practicing with you all this evening. Those of you here in the Zendo, those of you online, very nice to see you. This is our monthly Fusatsu ceremony, so atonement ceremony. And are there some of you online who haven't done this before? Don't think so, maybe. And anyone here in the Zendo who hasn't done this before? Okay, so maybe I'll say a few words about what this is, what we're doing here. But I just wanted to start by saying what a pleasure it is to come into the Zendo after a long and busy day and just be able to sit here quietly and stilly for 30 minutes. For me, after a busy day, it's a relief, and it's a chance for me to see how agitated I am, actually, when I walk in here. I can just see my mind is swirling about. When I walk in the door, I'm not aware that my mind is swirling around, but I sit here and I quickly become aware of that. Thoughts constantly coming and going. I start to feel the tensions in my body, which I also wasn't aware of when I came in the door. It feels like there's a little bit of a reverberation. I don't know what to do about that. Maybe maybe turn down the volume on the mic slightly. Okay. So it's just part of that Zazen period is just starting to become aware of myself. It's not necessarily comfortable when I first sit down. I'm scattered. I'm trying to stay present, bring my awareness back to my body and my breath, but constantly it's zooming off to something else that happened earlier this morning or this afternoon. And it's like that. It's just constantly zooming away, and then I'm trying to come back, and the body is tense, as is the mind. So it's not an instant kind of relaxation. And yet, over the course of the period, I do start to relax. My body starts to relax, and my mind starts to settle down. After a while, I'm not so consumed just by what's going on in my head. I'm aware of my body, how I'm sitting on the cushion, if I have some tension in my chest or my shoulders. But I'm also aware of what's going on around me, some workers' voices in the street, or the sound of the air purifiers whirring in the room. I start to come out of my own head a little bit and start to wake up to what's going on around me. So that after a half an hour, I'm really not in the same place I was when I walked in the room. I may be feeling tired. That's one thing. I often, at the end of the first period of sitting, I suddenly feel my fatigue. And I think that's part of the process. It's a good sign when you become aware that you're weary after a day of activity. And at the same time, when the bell sounds, I'm ready to get up and do whatever's next. I'm more present to what's going on, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing. And on a night like tonight, the next thing is Fusatsu ceremony. So Fusatsu means atonement ceremony, the way we translate it here. And we might think that Zazen, our meditation practice, and atonement are completely separate things, that they're like the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of practice. One is still and quiet and interior, and the other is active, and we're chanting and moving around, and we're engaged with one another, moving with the bells and cues that we get, and with one another in our bowing and chanting. It might seem like they're opposites, but I think there's a way in which the Fusatsu ceremony actually corresponds to Zazen. The first part of the ceremony is where we chant the verse of atonement. All evil karma ever committed by me, since of old on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born in my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. So what's going on in that first part is we are acknowledging the stream of thoughts that run through our mind. We're acknowledging all of the attachments and delusions that run through us constantly, and that that cause us to act in ways that are not skillful, either physically or in terms of our speech, in terms of our thought. Things that we do, actions, activities that are not skillful and that bring about harm or bring about suffering. That's what we're doing in that first section, is recognizing and acknowledging all of those delusions and attachments that create harm and suffering, individually for ourselves and for everyone. So it's a little bit like in Zazen when we first sit down and we start to become aware of all of the thoughts buzzing through our heads, pulling us one way or the other, causing us to want to jump up and do something else because it's a little uncomfortable, or we're kind of uptight. But we just keep sitting and we become aware of all of those reactive tendencies that we have, and stemming from our mind, to do with what we want and what we don't want, what we like, what we don't like, and our basic confusion about who we are, and our lack of centeredness in who we really are. It's a little bit like Zazen. The second part of the ceremony is where we invoke all the different manifestations of Buddha. Manjusri, Avalokiteshvara, Samantabhadra, etc. These are different aspects of Buddha, or the enlightened mind. Our compassionate nature, our wise nature, our nature that wants to serve based on our vow to be a benefit in the world. And so in the second part of the ceremony, we are connecting with all of those different manifestations of our true nature. Just as in the first part, we recognize our oneness with all of our delusions and the suffering that we cause. In the second part, we recognize the other side, our true nature. And it's a little bit like in Zazen, when we finally start to settle down, when we finally are able to see our minds at work and our tensions and our reactive tendencies. We stay present with patience, and we see what there is going on inside ourselves. And then we start to see what's going on around us. And that is the awakening of Buddha in each of us. We are in those moments when we come out of our heads for a minute, we are manifesting our true nature, our Buddha nature. So it's like Zazen. And then the third part of the ceremony is where we chant the 4 vows. Sentient beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Desires are inexhaustible, or illusions, another translation would be delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas, all phenomena are boundless. I vow to master them. The Buddha way is unattainable. I vow to attain it. So here, what we're doing in the ceremony is coming from our awareness of our delusions and suffering, coming from our awareness of our true nature, we now are channeling our energy towards practice and towards service, to be of benefit and to help relieve suffering for ourselves and others. That's what's in those 4 bodhisattva vows. And it's kind of like in Zazen, after we have finally settled down, our minds are quieter, we're more aware of our surroundings and ourselves, we're finally able to rise at the sound of the bell and step forward and do whatever we need to do next in our lives. So here again, this correspondence between Zazen practice and what we do in the ceremony. The 4th part of the ceremony is the officiant gives a talk about the precepts. Unfortunately, Myoko Roshi could not be with us tonight. She had a conflict, so I'm stepping in, pinch hitting for her. But I thought I would speak about the 3 pure precepts tonight. The 3 pure precepts are ceasing from evil, doing good, and doing good for others. And I'd like to talk about them in relation to what Bernie Glassman and the Zen Peacemaker Order calls the 3 tenets. Bernie Glassman and some of his successors, including our own Enkyo Roshi, when she was working with him, studying with him, came up with new definitions, contemporary definitions, to interpret what the 3 treasures are all about. And Bernie ended up calling these the 3 tenets. So the first one, as a definition of ceasing from evil, they called not knowing. What an interesting way to think about ceasing from evil, as not knowing. But this is referring to the way they put it was not knowing and thereby giving up fixed ideas about myself and others. So letting go of our ideas about who we are, who others are, and the sense of separation between ourselves and others. Coming from a place of complete openness, without any prejudice, without any pre-established set of criteria, complete openness, letting go of all other thoughts, coming from a place before thought, that is ceasing from evil. And then the second tenet, which corresponds to doing good, they defined as bearing witness. This is a very interesting idea as well. Bearing witness as a form of doing good. What is bearing witness? In the 3 tenets, they talk about bearing witness to the joy and suffering of the world. So coming from the place of not knowing, but starting, which is a deep place, coming almost from the level of the absolute, starting to engage with the world and starting to engage with others, but not from a place of, I know what's right. This is right, this is wrong. But just to witness, to observe, and to see clearly what there is in myself and around me and in others. Just to see things clearly as they are, bearing witness. This, they're saying, is a way of thinking about doing good. And then the third tenet, corresponding to doing good for others, is sometimes they translate it as loving action, or another translation is action, appropriate response that comes out of not knowing and bearing witness. In other words, coming from the starting point of profound oneness with all things, and then starting to engage with the world and with others from a place of clarity, then taking that step forward to act, to try to help relieve suffering and be of benefit and to serve. That is a way of doing good for others, a way of thinking about doing good for others. So one time, years ago, I was reading through some of Shinryu Roshi's notes from when she was studying with Bernie Glassman. And I found on this one page of scribbles from the conversation that they were having, it said, Zazen equals bearing witness. And I thought, oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense to me. Zazen, our Zazen, is like bearing witness to the joy and suffering of the world. When we're sitting, especially after our mind has settled down a little bit, we can start to see what's going on inside ourselves and around us. That's our experience in Zazen once we settle. And that's really does seem to fit the notion of bearing witness to me. But oftentimes I tend to think about Zazen as associated with another state of mind, which is very deep, in which coming from a place of non-separation and unity with all things. I also think about Zazen in those terms. I was recently looking at Nancy Mujo Baker's book on the precepts. It came out just a few years ago. At the back of the book, there's an appendix where there's a talk by Bernie Glassman. And in that talk, he says that about how Zazen is bearing witness. But he also says other things that really imply that not knowing, coming from the deep place of not knowing and total non-separation, where there's not even any observer, and there's no one even bearing witness, that too is an aspect of Zazen. So for a while I'd been thinking, well, if bearing witness is Zazen, then not knowing must be something different from Zazen. But it suddenly dawned on me that no, actually we can think about Zazen in terms of not knowing. And we can think about Zazen in terms of bearing witness, where there is a separation between ourselves and the world. But we're engaging with the world, but not in such a dualistic way that we have set ideas about right and wrong, oneself and others. It's still more open in a way. So Zazen we could think of as both aspects, not knowing and bearing witness. And where does that leave us with the third, which is loving action? Surely sitting still in Zazen and loving action are different. But it started to occur to me that maybe if I can think about not knowing and bearing witness in terms of Zazen, maybe I can think about compassionate action also in terms of Zazen. And what would that be like? So I'm thinking about it at the moment as like that moment when we step up and get up and step off our cushion and do whatever we have to do next, whatever the situation calls for, with the mind of Zazen that we have cultivated through our practice. So that all of the three treasures the three pure precepts and all of the three tenets, in a way we can look at through the practice of Zazen. So here's the little formulation that I've come to. The the root, not knowing is the root of Zazen. Bearing witness is the flowering of Zazen. And compassionate action is the fruit of Zazen. So what I'm saying in all of this is that there's a way in which I think our Zazen practice and our atonement practice and our precepts practice are all the same. They really are completely aligned. Zazen, atonement, precepts, they're all aligned, completely aligned. This may sound a little abstract to you, but it's just a way of talking about what can't be talked about. It's a way of thinking about things that can't really be grasped and thought very effectively. But the important thing is not the concepts, it's so much as really engaging wholeheartedly in Zazen, engaging wholeheartedly in Fusatsu, chanting and bowing, and engaging wholeheartedly in our precepts action in the world. So all you really have to do is to be fully present and act wholeheartedly. And all of those dimensions come to life. Your Zazen practice comes to life. Your atonement practice comes to life. Your precepts practice comes to life. In the last part of the ceremony, we're going to do some more chanting and bowing. So please bring Zazen, atonement, and precepts to life. Thank you.